All right, this is looking very nice. However, the chocolate is very flat over here. I don't like the look of the chocolate. So let's change this up quickly. We can see our chocolate right here comes from this color ramp right here. And on this color ramp, if I Control Shift left click it, you can see that right now it's just one color here and then another color here. So there is no gradient as far as the height of the chocolate. Again, this color ramp is controlling the height because it's plugged into the math nodes which go into the displacement. And this one is controlling the mask for where the chocolate is. As you can see, it's plugged into the mix shader. So for this one, there is no gradient. It's just no height right here or very little height. And then right here, all of a sudden, it should have height and it's just flat. So we want it to go more of a, black or zero color to a white color over here, and then back down to a black color right there. So it has a gradient where it's going up to a peak right here, and then it's higher right here, and then back down. So for that, let's change this up. We're just going to plug the Musgrave, because if we Control Shift left click our Musgrave, you can see that this has height, where right here it's black or a value of 0, then it goes to gray, which let's say it's a value of like 0.3 or 0.4, to a more white color, which is like 0.8, 0.9, and then back down to gray. So we'll have that sloping effect like that from, 0 to 0.8, 0.9 here, and then back down to 0 on the other side. So we'll give us that sloping look. So let's plug this Musgrave directly into this color ramp instead of plugging the color ramp into there. Let's Control Shift left click it. And here I'm going to click on the little drop down and select Reset Color Ramp right there. So now we get this gradient, and let's Control Shift left click our mix shader. And you can see that our chocolate looks a lot better now. It's not flat as it was before. All right, very, very cool. Of course, for this color ramp, you could go here and you could bring this up if you want it more like that to flatten it out. You could also bring this white slider right here down, and this will raise the chocolate higher. So as you can see right there, obviously you don't want it all the way up, otherwise it's going to be way too high and kind of flatten out. But I do want to raise it a little bit because right here, it's a little strange right there. So let's bring this slider down so that it has a nicer look, especially right here. All right, that looks great right there. Very nice. Now let's get an HDRI in here so that we could see the bottom and the rest a little bit better. And you can see the subsurface scattering really coming into play right here, where you could see the light penetrating through the waffle at the bottom right here, and that looks really nice. But let's add an HDRI. So let's go to the world settings here, change this from color to environment texture. We're going to go to polyhaven.com. So in polyhaven.com, we're going to click on Browse HDRIs, and this is an awesome site where you could get some really, really cool free HDRIs. Here we're going to type in, you could get any HDRI you want. Let's try coffee shop. So right here, there's a little comfy cafe. I'm going to get that. Why not? And click on download. Once you've downloaded it back in Blender, go ahead and click on open and open that HDRI. And there we go. I'm also going to go to the render settings under film, enable transparent so that we don't see the HDRI, but it is still lighting our scene. As you can see underneath, we could see a lot better. And underneath, we could see one issue we have is that the displacement for the chocolate and for the butter is still there. So we don't have the colors because we masked that out, but we still have the displacement. So we need to mask out the displacement. To do that, it's pretty simple. Let's go to our last math node on our displacement, which is this maximum. And you can see our math node is like this. So we have the displacement on both sides. Now we want to make it so that down here we have the displacement of the waffle, but not of the butter or the chocolate. So to do that, let's hit Shift A. Let's add another math node. And we're going to connect this one to the bottom. And we're going to get this color ramp right here, which is our mask to have stuff just at the top, again with the white on top and the black color at the bottom. So here, if we plug this color into this math right here, Control Shift left click, You can see that obviously add is not going to work because we still have it. And right here is just adding more to it. But we're going to change this to multiply. And now you can see what that gives us. And the reason this works, once again, the math behind it, if we Control-Shift left click this, you can see that everything here is black and a value of 0. And what's on top is a value of 1. So if we take this and we multiply, we're multiplying these. So right here on top, it's multiplying all our values by 1. So all our values right here multiplied by 1 is just going to be our original values, whatever they are. So the zeros are still going to be 0. The 1 is going to be 1 because 1 times 1 is 1, etc. And here on the sides, since the sides and the bottom are black, that's going to be a value of 0. So now any value here is going to be 0 because 1 times 0 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. So everything on the sides and the bottom is going to be 0, and everything on the top is still going to be the exact same value because it's multiplied by 1 here and 0 everywhere else. So if we Control-Shift left click this, you can see that now, well, right now it's still displacing it, and that's because we need to plug in this new multiply value into our displacement right here. And now you can see that it's gone. Very, very cool. So now we got that. However, now we have one issue, and that is at the bottom, we now have no displacement for the waffle. So this grid pattern, by the way, for the waffle, let's go over here to the scale vector math scale right here, and let's put it to 2. That way we have more grids of the waffle. So again, at the bottom, we still want that part to be displaced. We just don't want the butter or the chocolate, but we still want the grid pattern. So for that, we need to re-add this one right here, which is our original grid pattern. We want to re-add this to this one right here. So now to get this grid pattern on the bottom, we're just going to go ahead and hit Shift-A, add another math node, and we're going to plug this one into here and get our original grid pattern right here on the color ramp and plug that into here as well, and Control-Shift left click it. Now you can see that this kind of works, but not really, because now once again we have this grid on top of our butter. So let's change this from add to maximum right there. And you can see with it set to maximum, we now have the grid at the bottom. And over here we have our original grid, butter, and chocolate right here. And again, the reason this works is because with the maximum, it's going to output the largest value based on these two input values. And since here we have 0, obviously, because it's black, and here we have some values that are higher than 0, so it's going to output these values right here that are higher than 0 as the grid. And then over here, these values that are on top right here are already higher than the grid, and they're equivalent to the grid as well because we got both of these. You can see we have the same pattern on both. So here at the bottom, it's going to replace this black with this right here because these values are higher. And then at the top, it's just going to stay the same. So now we get this pattern or mask where we have the grid at the bottom and the grid, butter, and chocolate here. So let's plug this into the displacement now, into the height, and Control-Shift left click. All right, very, very cool. Now another thing I want to change is that right here, these lines right here, whatever they're called on the waffle, are a little bit too thin. So let's go to our waffle right here on the color ramp, and we could bring this slider down, and you can see that it will widen this part of the waffle, and that will look a little bit better. So just like that. Now obviously don't bring it over too much, otherwise it's going to look a little bit more like hills. You still want it to be like that. And once again with this one, we could increase it to bring them higher or bring them lower. So right here, I'm just gonna go ahead and increase this just a little bit like that, just one scroll up. And there we go. Look at that. How awesome does that look? Very cool. Now we need to add the powdered sugar. By the way, the butter may be a little bit high for my liking. So I'm going to put the map range I'm just going to put this back down to 1, so this map range isn't really doing anything for now. But we could also bring this lower if we want. So for example, if we put it to like a 0.7, you can see we could bring the butter down. And this is just good to have if you want to change the height of the butter. Maybe I'll put it to 1.1 so that it has some use. All right, very cool. Now we want to add the powdered sugar. So let's go over here where we have all our principled nodes. Shift A, search for a principled BSDF right here. And look at that. How awesome does that look? All right, here for the powdered sugar, let's hit Shift A, add a noise texture right here. And for this, we can use one of the vector coordinates that we already have over here. So let's make sure that it's one that we haven't changed the mapping. So for example, this one that's connected to the scale. Let's just grab this one and bring it over here. Wow, I'm surprised I found that. All right, bring it over here. Then for this, let's Control-Shift left click it. And again, this is going to be the powdered sugar, so we want this to be very, very small. I'm going to go ahead and change the scale to like 100 right there. And the detail, I'm going to put it to 15. Now, obviously, we don't want the powdered sugar everywhere, or maybe we do. No, we don't. So what I'm going to do is with this, I'm also going to hit Shift A, add a Musgrave texture right here. And instead of dragging the coordinate all the way to there, let's just Shift right click and drag here to add a reroute node and plug that in there. Then with this one, I want to combine both of these so that we create a mask because we have the noise texture here and the Musgrave here. So what I want to do is I want to make the noise texture be only on the places of the Musgrave where it's white. So I'm going to hit Shift A, add a math node, and let's go ahead and plug the factor of the noise into the top and the Musgrave in the bottom, and Control-Shift left click this if it isn't already. So now if we change this from add to multiply right here, you can see what we got. We got the noise being only in the parts where it's white right there. Because again, with the Musgrave, the black parts are 0 and they're multiplying the noise. Whoops, there we go. So any black parts, which is a value of 0 times this, is going to be 0. And the white parts are 1, so 1 times whatever this is going to be 1. So now we have the parts that are white right here from the Musgrave, as you can see. It's still going to have the noise, and the other parts is just going to be black or 0. Now obviously, this is going to be a lot of sugar right here, powdered sugar. It's just completely condensed. I want to kind of put it down the amount of powdered sugar. So for this, on the noise, I'm going to go ahead and add a color ramp, drop this after the noise, and if we Control-Shift left click the color ramp, you can see that here, if I bring the black slider up, this will increase the amount of black that there is here, and it will decrease the amount of white. So now we only have a couple of white speckles. We could also bring the white here down so that the white speckles are more prominent. And now if we Control-Shift left click to multiply, you can see that there's less white speckles or powder right there. So it just looks a lot better as we only have a little bit of it instead of, if I hit the M key to mute the color ramp, you can see that that's a lot of powdered sugar, whereas this is just a little bit. All right, next we want to take this powdered sugar. Now for this principled BSDF, I'm just going to leave it to white and just everything at default basically for the powdered sugar. And then we need to go ahead and over here, let's move this displacement a little bit and move this. I'm going to add this before the last mix shader because this last one has this color ramp right here that's plugged into it, which is the one that removes everything from the bottom. And obviously I don't want powdered sugar underneath the waffle or on the side. So I want to make sure that this one is the last one. So I'm going to select this mix shader here, Shift D, duplicate it, and drop it right after. We're going to go ahead and leave this in this slot, and let's plug the sugar right here into the bottom slot right there. So now here, Let me zoom in and go to the top. You can see that factor of 0 is just our original thing. Factor of 1 is the powdered sugar, which right now just looks like our whole thing has sugar or snow on it. So now we're going to use this mask and put that into the factor, because now if we go over here to the multiply, the parts that are white are going to be the powdered sugar, and the parts that are black are going to be the rest of the waffle. So let's plug this into the factor right here. And now if we Control Shift left click this last one, you can see that we got some powdered sugar on here, as you can see right there. Now it might not be that visible, so we could go back over here all the way down here to the color ramp, and we could bring this black slider down a little bit if we want more. You can see now it's more visible. Just kind of contrast these two together. Again, with this, you could play around with all these different settings. There's so much tweaking that can be done, which I'm not going to do because otherwise this tutorial would be hours and hours. But you can see here, now we got the powdered sugar on there. Look at that. This thing looks delicious. I'm getting kind of hungry. And look at that. Very, very nice. Now for this noise over here, whoops, where's the noise texture? For the noise texture, maybe I'll increase it a little bit. 150 might be good. There we go. That looks great. Like I said, feel free to tweak all these different settings of the whole node setup that we've done. There's so much you could do depending on how you want it to look. One of the last things I want to do is on our waffle right here. So on the waffle, I want to add noise bump. So to do that, I'm going to go over here. And with this one, we don't need this bump anymore, which is giving us the bump of our waffle texture right here. We don't need that because with the displacement right here, we have it set to displacement and bump. So this bump right here is actually useless because right now it's taking this right here and plugged into the displacement, and it's doing displacement and bump. So we don't need that one. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this color ramp from this bump. And instead, I'm going to plug the noise texture we have here. So this noise texture right here, I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the bump. And this will basically give it a lot of tiny little bumps on the waffle, which will basically give it some texture. So plug that into the height, and then Control Shift left click the last mix shader. And right here, I'm going to put this to a value of 1 just to exaggerate it so that you could see what it looks like. Let me go ahead and wait for this to load a little bit. So now you can see that there's a bunch of little bumps or detail or texture on our waffle, which is very nice. Distance of 1 is too big, so I'm going to put it to like 0.03, something like that. All right, very nice. Now right here on the edge, it has a little bit of chocolate and it looks a little strange. So let's go over here to this color ramp right here. And I'm going to change this from constant because right here it makes it a little bit too sharp. I'm going to change this to ease right there. I'm going to bring the white slider all the way to here. And the black slider, I'm going to bring that up as well. So if we Control Shift left click that, you can see what that's giving us right here. So I'm going to bring this up. Again, the black is going to be where there's no chocolate or powder or butter, etc. But with it set to constant, it was too much of a sharp fall off, and it was creating a little bit of a strange look. So change it to ease and adjust that. And now we got that right there. Now, one last thing. You can see that the waffle is a little bit too square looking. It's very sharp. So since we already have the subdivision surface modifier, I'm just going to hit 7 to go into top view. And here I'm going to change it from simple to Catmull Clark right there. And then hit tab to go into edit mode. Control R, scroll my mouse wheel up twice, left click, right click, and then hit S, Y, scale these up so that they're very close to the edge, but not all the way there, right there. And Control R, right here, left click, right click, SX, scale these on the X axis so that they are close to the edge. You could go in solid view as well. It might be easier to see. SX, scale these to about right there. And there we go. Also, make sure to right-click Shade Smooth. We've already done that, but just in case. And now the waffle is not so squared off. It's got a nice rounded kind of look. Look at that. This looks delicious. Very, very nice. One last thing I want to do for the chocolate here. I'm just going to bring the white slider down a little bit. Again, the slider for the chocolate, it will bring the height of the chocolate up. I'm going to bring it down a little bit to bring the height up just a little bit. All right, let's give this a test render, and then we will set it up so that we could quickly change those options on the fly. So here, I'm going to go ahead and set up my camera at about this angle. Control-Alt, numpad 0, right there. Grab the camera. Let's go to camera properties, and under the viewport display, increase the pass part out to 1 and zoom it out right there. Also, I'm going to select this over here, delete that, and erase all these amazing annotations. So right there, let's zoom in a little bit. It's looking a little bit skinny to me, so I'm going to go into edit mode. Let me go in solid mode because it'll be easier. I'm going to select this face, Control plus to increase the selection by 1, and hit GZ, bring this down, make it a little bit thicker right there, and bring this down. Let's do a test render. I'm going to go to the render properties, put the time limit to 1 minute, so 1M, and then let's do a test render. Let's go to solid view so that it doesn't calculate anything here. Render image. By the way, one other thing, I was wondering, why does it look so flat? Don't forget on your model, in the render subdivision levels, make sure to increase this to 6. All right, let's try that again. Let me stop this render. And let's re-render it. All right, render image. And look at that. That looks delicious. Now, a couple changes I want to do. Let's go to slot 1 by hitting 1 on the keyboard. Here on the color, and then we'll be done because this video has gone on long enough, but it's freaking awesome. I definitely want to see your results, so make sure to share it on blendermania3.com. Here I'm going to hit Shift A, add an RGB curves, and I'm going to drop this after the color ramp for our waffle. So right there. And then here again, the RGB curves to explain it quickly. If you bring it up here in the middle, it will brighten your color. And if you bring it down, it will darken it. So here, if we go ahead and create a small S curve, so add a point there and one here, it will contrast it slightly. So now let's go ahead and re-render this because it will have a darker, richer color to it. So you can see now if I hit 2, this was before, and this is now. Again, it's very subtle. One other thing, and this is the last thing, let's do a little bit of compositing just very quickly. Go to the UV editor here. Here we're going to go to the compositor, click on use nodes. Again, if you want to learn all about shading nodes and all the compositing nodes, check out the nodes course I just put out. The link will be in the description. I go over every single node and all of their options and how to use it. It is awesome. Now here I'm going to Control Shift left click it so that we get a viewer node. And in the drop down, I'm going to select viewer node. And we may need to Control Shift left click it again for it to update. Now here I'm just going to add 2 simple nodes. Once again, an RGB curves. Drop that in between the composite and Control Shift left click it to the viewer. Once again, we bring it up, it will brighten it, bring it down, it will darken it. So I'm just going to create a simple S curve once again to contrast it. And this is going to give us a nice, deep, richer look, and it looks awesome. Then I'm also going to hit Shift A, add a hue saturation value. And this, you could change the hue, the saturation, and the value. So again, the hue is the colors, which we don't want to change. The saturation will make it less saturated or more grayed out or more saturated, which I want to change a little bit. I'm going to put it to 1.02. And then the value here is going to be the lightness or darkness of it. So if we bring it down, it will make it darker. And if we bring it up, it will lighten it up, as you can see there. I'm going to put the value to like a 1.3 or so, like that. So now if I select this and hit the M key, this was before and after. If I select both, M key, before, after. And you can see it just gives it a much richer look to it, and it looks really, really nice. All right, look at that. That looks awesome. Now, last thing we need to do, I know I keep saying that, but we are just going to put this into a group so that we could go ahead and quickly change this very easily on the front end. So I'm going to select everything here except for the output node and hit Control G to create a group. Let's go over here. The first thing we want to be able to change, anything that we input into here, we could quickly change it. So if you hit tab, you can see you could go out of the group, and we have the group here. And you hit tab, you could go into the group. Let's hit the N key and relabel the group. We'll name it Waffle. And here, once again, if we put anything into this group input, we could change it easily. So the scale right here, which is going to be the scale of the waffle squares, let's put that in there. And now you can see when we hit tab, we could change it here. Now for this, you want to put whole numbers. If you put, for example, 2.3 or anything, you'll see that on the sides, you get the waffle sticking out. Unless that's the kind of look you want to go for, make sure to just put in whole numbers. So either 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And you can see that that works beautifully. Next, I want to go ahead and be able to change the chocolate amount. So for the chocolate is over here, and the chocolate is this Musgrave. So the scale of the Musgrave. Again, if we put the scale down to 0, you can see we have no chocolate, or we could put it up, have more chocolate, etc. So I'm going to put this back to 10, and I'm going to put the scale into here. By the way, we could hit the N key and rename these if we go to group. Let's rename the first scale to Waffle Squares right there, and we'll name this one to Chocolate. If you wanted to, you could also input the factor right here to change the distortion of the chocolate. You could put in the detail. You could put in whatever values you want in here to be able to quickly change them. Let's also put the height of the butter. Why not? Let's put this in here, the 2 max on the map range. Rename this to butter height right there. And then lastly, oh yeah, the powdered sugar. So the powdered sugar, I'm just going to move this down so that I could access it easier. The powdered sugar is this one right here. So here we could plug in the scale of the Musgrave into here. You don't want to plug in the scale of the noise because we're using the noise for the powdered sugar and the bump of the waffle. So you don't really want to change that. You could add a new separate noise to the powdered sugar if you want to do that. But again, I'll leave it up to you. We'll name this powdered sugar right there. And there we go. That's all the values I want to put in for this. Let's bring this back over here. And if we hit tab to get out of the group, you can see that now we could quickly change these really fast just right here. So the waffle squares, we could just type in a number there and increase the squares of the waffle. The chocolate here, we could change the chocolate, how it looks, how much we have, etc. by just increasing and changing this number. How awesome is that? Look at that. That's a lot of chocolate. All right, let's put this back to 10. Then right here, we have the butter height. We could change the height of the butter. Now this is going to be very intense. Yeah, that's we put a whole stick of butter on our waffle. Brilliant. Obviously, you know, this number, you're going to change it very incrementally. You could actually hold down shift and move this, holding down shift to move it in smaller increments. And then we have the powdered sugar. We could put this to 0, or let's say, you know, 20, add more powdered sugar, etc. as you want. Now for the powdered sugar, let me put this back to 5. I'm going to go back here. It's not visible enough for my liking, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this down and bring this down a little bit too. That way we could see it a little bit more. maybe bring this up a little bit. Let me Control Shift left click it to see, or actually I need to Control Shift left click the multiply. Let me Control Shift left click that and adjust this quickly. There we go, something like that. That should be a little bit more visible. There we go. Again, feel free to adjust it on your own time. Oh, I clicked the wrong mix shader. I clicked the second to last one instead of the last one. I was wondering why there was still chocolate on the side. All right, and then lastly, we want to be able to move the butter. So to move the butter, it's really cool. We could go over here, and you can see that this is the texture coordinates for the butter. We could plug these into the group input right here as well and change it like this. For example, if I left click and drag down on these and then move these, you can see that it moves the butter. However, a much cooler way to do it is just go over here. You can see that we have this object tab right here. Let's hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and Shift A, add an empty. Let's go to the empty properties, increase the scale to 2 right there, just so that's bigger. And here in the object properties, hit tab to go back into the group. We're gonna, under the object, select empty. And so now this coordinate system is moved with this empty. So if we hit, in fact, instead of hitting G and Shift Z to exclude the Z axis, let's hit the N key. Under item, let's lock the Z location right here so that when we grab it, it won't go down. And now you can see that wherever we move this, we can move the butter, which is really freaking awesome, as you can see right there. If you hit G, Shift Z, it helps to move it a little bit, even if we lock the axis, just because of the angle that we're in. Of course, if you're in top view, you know, you could just move it as you want. But it just helps to lock the Z axis. That way we make sure not to move it there. And check that out. We can now move the butter wherever we want. That is so cool. Alrighty. So that is how to create a procedural waffle texture. Again, if you look at this, it is just a single flattened down cube, but we created it and made it into this awesome masterpiece right here, which we could quickly change right here on the front end of things. Really, really awesome. Now with that, this is the end of this tutorial. Make sure to share your results on BlenderMania3D.com with me. Leave some suggestions of things you may want to see as far as tutorials. Also, if you'd like to learn more about nodes, once again, click the link in the description. Check out the new course. It is packed with value. And also, tweak your waffle to your preference and the settings that you want. And like I said, share your result. Cannot wait to see it. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now. Au revoir.